This week, we will be doing self-portraits. Self-portraits, I know it can seem kind of like a daunting task. This one is way more lifelike than we've been doing so far, but with easy tips and tricks, we'll be able to measure out the facial features and end up with a pretty good looking self-portrait. Always remember that we're going to be checking our face, examining ourselves very closely, and measuring it out in the same time that we are creating. So the supplies include your watercolor paper, a pencil, an eraser, a mirror of some sort, so this can be handheld. I used a full-length mirror that I set up on a chair in front of me, and your watercolor palette, and a cup of water and the brush. Starting your self-portrait is fairly easy at first. All you need to do is draw a nice big circle about the size of your palm. Try and make it as circular as possible. And if you wanted to, you could use a cup or a bowl and trace along that in order to make your circle. Draw lines horizontally and vertically through the center, and then use that vertical line in order to draw another line below the circle. This will be your chin line. So from the side of the circle, draw down to that chin line, lengthen the chin line horizontally a little bit, and then taper it down at a certain point, about like a third way through, in order to make a jawline. Find the halfway
Assess
your own face and
in between
to kind of get an idea of where your jawline
together
will be in order to find your eye line. So your eyes sit about halfway through your face. Next, right after that, measure the halfway point, kind of guesstimate using your finger or your pencil. So that line in between the eye line and the chin line, that is our nose line. That's where our nose usually lines up. About 1/3 of the length of the face. Next, measure the halfway point in between your nose line and your chin line, and this will be your lip line. When it comes to the eyes and the nose and the lips, so the eyes are at the halfway point of the face. Couldn't quite get down the middle, but the corner of your eye will always match up with the edge of your nose most likely, and the middle of your pupil will match up with the corners of your lips. When it comes to how the eyes are spaced out themselves, the length of your eye, there will be a length in between where your nose is, and then where your ears are, come down from the corner of your eye down to where your nose is. Also, there's about a little bit less than an eye to the side of the head. So I kind of guesstimated kind of the width of my nose and put it up, and so that's going to be the corner of my eyes. I kind of looked at myself for reference and saw how large my nose was, and measured it up against the sides of what I had. Then I took my pencil and kind of measured it to make sure that the eye shape was the same. I found that I didn't have enough room on the edges of the face to be just a little bit less than the length of the eye, so I added. So again, I am just taking my time to measure out to make sure that the links are the same and kind of widening the face where I need to. Quite honestly, I might have widened the face a little bit too much. The eye is only about 3/4 of the length to the side, so it's not the full eye length, but a little bit less. So keep that in mind. And also keep in mind that you can make mistakes. I made several mistakes, I just erased and kept going. So each time you try and doesn't quite turn out just the way you want, it's okay. Experiment until it looks like how you want it to. But don't go for perfect, because then you'll end up erasing so much that you'll take away fibers of the paper. And make sure that you don't erase too hard, because then you'll end up taking up fibers of the paper. So there I measured from the eye to the corner of the lips. So you're going to measure from the center of the eye down to the corner of the lips. And then you're going to add the nose. Put a lot of details. Don't feel rushed to put details in just yet. I ended up erasing a lot of my details later and then adding them back again. Then I drew in the other eye and added the pupil. Next comes the nose. Noses are tricky. I myself made quite a few mistakes, but, just take a time to look at yourself. Maybe if you need to draw some practice noses, draw some practice noses. So remember, the line is about right under the nose. So I started with my nostrils and kind of drew out from there. It was a lot of trial and error, but I think I got the results that I wanted. So when drawing the nostrils, kind of draw like an M shape. At least that's how my nose is. And then build the rounded end of your nose from there and draw up to get the bridge of your nose. Again, took some trial and error, but I got to the right enough nose for my face. Then I moved down to the lips, so I drew the little cupid's bow that goes in between, and then placed the top of the lip above that. So I started at the line in the middle, and then I drew a little bump over onto the line that matches up with your pupil. And then to draw the part of the lip, our lips aren't just flat in the middle. Make sure that you draw like a little bit of a curl in the middle. Again, it's fine to erase. It's fine to go back. And then connect the little curl of the lip to the ends. I erased those eye lines once I was done with those, and then added more detail as I went. So lips tend to curl up at the ends. I wanted to show like a little bit of a smile. So just making sure that you're checking in with your reflection every once in a while. So draw a little bit, refer back to your mirror, and then keep going. A little bit at a time. So you'll see now that the lips are halfway in between the top of the nose. I went ahead and corrected a little bit by adding some chin. I looked at my face and realized that I had more chin than what I had given myself in my sketch. So I made sure that chin was prominent, because that's part of me. My chin. From there, I added more details and kind of checked and assessed with my mirror. When drawing the brows, make sure that you leave plenty of space for your eyelids. Refer to your mirror, see how arched your eyebrows are, how thick your eyebrows are, the shape of them. Go for there and then add your eyelid. Before moving on to the hair, I erased all of those little reference lines. Really went at it. Remember, once you add the watercolor, you won't be able to get rid of these lines. So go ahead and erase all that you can. Be careful that when you go to brush away the shavings of the eraser, you might end up smudging a little bit. So be mindful of maybe how clammy your hands are, or how hard you're wiping away those shavings. Next, I worked in the ears. So as you remember in the little demonstration I showed, they start where the corner of the eyes do, and then they end where the nose ends. So that's usually a rule of thumb when drawing your ears. Add all the little folds from the inside of your ear. Draw the other ear, make sure that it lines up with the one that you just drew. So ears typically have that little bump in them, that little part that comes off of the face. So make sure that you draw that and kind of draw a line that curls up underneath the first. Once I had my ears, I kind of could see where my cheekbones go from there. The details of my eyes, including the bags of my eyes. I readjusted my pupils as I saw fit. Then I started with my hair. There's all different kinds of hairs. Mine is in a swoop, so I looked in my mirror for a lot of reference for how it fell on my face, and then followed with that. After the hair's done, using your mirror as a reference, uh, see where your neckline comes down from your face. So remember that the neck isn't a straight line, it kind of goes in and out. So if you wanted to draw kind of a loose circle or a loose arch, that might help you make that shape a lot more real. Then I added more of those little details like laugh lines and, the outlines of cheeks, scars, dimples, everything that makes me me. So I accentuated my little cheek dimples in my smile, my chin, uh, little scar that I have from a dog bite. Again, just like our lesson on Wabi Sabi, we all have little breaks and scrapes, including my biopsy scar from when I was a child. So all of these little, I'm proud of my scars. All of these little scars have made me who I am. All right. And after adding all those little details, you should have you. It might not look perfect, it might not look exactly you, but wow, I mean, if you made it to this part, good job. This is hard work. Um, Making self portraits is one of the oldest artistic endeavors and has been one of the most challenging. It's hard to look at ourselves sometimes, it's hard to assess ourselves sometimes, and it's hard to get such complicated facial features correct. But you did it. The watercolor, make sure that you erase a lot of the details that you don't want in your final work. So if there's some straight lines that you want to get rid of, just kind of shave off those. And here we go. We're going to get started on the watercolor part. I just did a light wash with watercolor. I didn't put too many details in it, and I kind of liked it that way. I added a lot of water first. Remember, it's easier to add later. You can always add more layers of watercolor if it doesn't end up as dark as you need it. So I am employing the technique called wet on wet. If you remember that before, that is where you go ahead and put a layer of water down on your watercolor paper, and then it'll disperse out once you add more color on top of that. So I started with an outline of my features and the cheekbones and sides of the face, and then added more water and worked out from that. Without thinking, I kind of went ahead and painted in my shirt. I wanted to have a nice lively red, but be careful when you add other colors next to a part that you already did wet on wet with, because most likely there will be bleeding between the two colors. I probably shouldn't have done this part yet, but you live and you learn, and that was one of my own not quite mistakes, because it still worked out all right. But just fair warning: if you put another color next to something else that you've already been using wet on wet with, most likely those two things will bleed. So your napkin, your paper tissue, your paper towel is your friend. If you add too much, or if something bleeds a little bit, go ahead and dab it up with whatever paper product you're using to wash off your brush. After adding a little bit of blush to my cheek, I went for the hair. So again, I'm employing quite a bit of water, not too much, because then you'll end up warping your paper. But enough to just kind of brush it out and kind of coax the color to the rest of it. So again, you don't have to have a heavy hand when it comes to watercolor. A lot of it's just kind of controlling the flow of where the paint's going. Um, it kind of influenced by where the water is, or wherever moisture is on your paper. Then I went in with kind of a darker red, like a cherry color, and outlined my features. So just kind of where those lines were that we drew on before, and then using the paint that's already there to blend out for like a lighter shade. Again, if you need to go back in and add more color later, you can wait until it's add the color that you need to, and then you can also let it dry a little bit and then come back in and add more color if it's not dark enough. So I added more red, tried to get it as close to my complexion as possible. And then I added more of that peach to it. If you add it in too dark of a spot, don't worry. Get some more water, blend it out. A lot of this will kind of be a lot of trial and error, and that's absolutely okay. Experiment until you get what you need. So I put a little bit more of that darker color on the darker parts of my eyes, the eyelid, and the eye bag, and then blend it out from there. So I kept blending and adding, so I added some darker, some more concentrated color underneath my hair to kind of show a shadow, kind of give it dimension. Realized I had too much, dabbed it up. Remember, your tissue is your friend, your paper towel is your eraser. And then add a little bit too much pink to my nose. And again, just had to erase. Next, I filled in details like my eyes. So when it comes to small little details, it's going to be tricky. It's going to be fiddly, adding a lot of water. It may bleed into what you've already painted. If you want to take a break at this moment before adding the details and kind of let your base dry, that would probably be preferable. So you can get up, stretch out, get a cup of water, and then come back to it once it's a little bit more dry. That'll give you a lot more control in making these details. So for details like the eyes, instead of going for true black, I instead went with a purple. When purple and brown kind of mix, they end up looking darker. And it's just easier, so when things do blend, it's harder to lift up black paint than it is to lift up one of the colors. So I added purple as the middle. And after I was satisfied with pupils, I added more color, splash more color to a lot of the other details. Remember, if it's too dark, just lift up gently with your paper towel and then blend out more until you get a lighter shade. And I added splashes of red, of rosiness elsewhere. After kind of filling in those last bits of shadow, I wanted to add like a really free-form background. So I thought about the colors and the mood that I wanted to have with my portrait and the meaning that I wanted to have behind it. In the end, I wanted to focus on the word growth. So I started drawing leaves and vines coming out from behind me. And I didn't do it in any sort of order. I just kind of tapped into the flow state and went with whatever felt natural, with whatever kind of shape that I was going with. I just started filling it in with different kinds of leaves and vines. Then I put together different leaf shapes together in order to make a flower, put a base of blue right smack in the middle, and then blended out from there. So it's very watery. I had a lot of fun experimenting. So really, really go for different shapes in the background. We were going for somewhat precision with the face. The background is your place to express yourself and go for a lot of different shapes. Again, I used that wet on wet technique. So I drew a leaf just purely in water first and then dropped in color. And then I sketched some more leaves. I really went for it. Again, the wet on wet technique requires a light touch. You don't have to, you never have to dig your bristles into the paper. Just kind of use the water to guide the pigments, those little bits of color, where you want them to. You can kind of see that the background blended into my hair. That ended up being a happy accident. Blues and purples are often used to create shadow, and that helps us create depth. So I incorporated that into my hair. You can see that kind of gave me a darker color, a more refined shadow. So I ended up putting that, using that technique for the rest of my portrait as well. And I added some purples and some blues to areas like under my eyes and so forth. So now with those little light touches of blue and purple, I now have more dimension to my face. And I know those are those final details that you put down. Remember, you can always let it dry and come back to add more details. And here I am, perfectly imperfect me. Come at this project with as little judgment as you can. Have fun looking at yourself, and make sure that you always kind of check in with your own features, measuring things up, like I'm kind of doing, and just have fun, you goof. I hope you had fun with this project. I certainly did. I hope that you keep drawing. I hope that you keep trying. Always remember, it's not mistakes, it's a stepping stone. We're getting to a destination, and the main fun is the journey along the way.